Hi everyone, it's Akansha Dimri, the founder and editor-in-chief of Tech Funding News, and welcome to the brand new episode of Tech Talks with TFN. We are in this prestigious tech club, a private members club, homegrown today, which is so beautiful and is always hosted and also visited by some beautiful and very successful entrepreneurs. And today we have with us Maya Kumar,
Nice to meet you.
who's the EVP of
Yeah.
Banks,
Yes.
right? How are you doing, Maya?
Good, I'm good. I'm excited to be here and having a chat.
Did you go around over here at all?
Yeah, I haven't, first time I visited this building, so it's pretty cool. Seems
And you
like
said
a
you
place
were-
to be.
You said you were at Home House.
I've
which
been
is-
at Home House before, yeah.
which is
yeah,
like
yeah.
the bigger kin
Which
of
is, yeah,
home.
it's just around the corner.
Lovely. So tell us more about your journey, Maya. You have been in politics, you've
Yeah.
done law, you've done banking.
Yeah.
There is so much attached to your career journey.
Yeah.
We would love to listen everything from the beginning.
Sure, yeah, I won't bore you too much, but I think, there's no perfect path to one's career progression. I also think that, people have to make career decisions or, even degree decisions quite young in their life where they haven't had much exposure to the working world and what really suits them and their lifestyle that they want to achieve. So I did take a path that really gave me the breadth of experience to make those decisions and ultimately push myself to this point. So yeah, after I studied politics, because I just enjoyed it, enjoyed history at school and then university too, it was a fitting subject to take. A natural progression to that is, well, how do you make that a career, as everyone talks about? And so law was something, it's also my family that I was like, okay, well, that's a good skill set, it's a hard skill that you can leverage. Finished law school, but I didn't really feel it was for me. I think it was a great thing to have on my CV and, being able to navigate contracts and think about frameworks are very important in any business. But I wanted to be more part of the deal making. I wanted to be about the commercial content, not necessarily the structures around them. So that's where I went into finance and asset management, was living in New York, came back, was in Dublin. So I had a lot of kind of, geographical experience as well in that industry. But what I felt I lacked, and this is nothing damning to asset management, is lack the innovation. I wanted more innovation in the work I was doing. I wanted to be more cutting edge. I wanted to push boundaries. I was living in Dublin at the time, and Google was like round the corner. LinkedIn had just opened an office, so there was this buzz around it. So I just kind of dipped my toe more into it, got more into reading books and meeting people, and that's when I started my own business. It was something I'd never done before, but also in a kind of subject matter I'd never really focused on around sort of on demand, basically services like haircuts, beard trim, especially for men. It was kind of riding a bit of the wave, I'll be honest, around the kind of gig economy and on demand. There were similar businesses in the US that were taking off in the likes of New York. I grew it over 3 years, got a team, product ops, serviced London as a city, raised some money. It was soon after Brexit happened, and there was this sort of wave around like, oh, well, how much capital do you need to get profitability? Uber has taken a while. They still haven't got there at that point. So, how will you really sustain this model, especially when you take an Uber several times a day, but you only take a haircut maybe once a month, right? On average was what I saw. So that kind of pushed me to think more about how to make it a sustainable business model. So I did that, and then I looked for basically a career leap forward from that. So given my kind of finance background, my entrepreneurial background, I was advised to go into fintech. So that's where I kind of leapt into the world of fintech.
Got it. That's a very interesting journey. I mean, you have been a founder also at some stage. And what is the timeline we are talking about over here? Because that's a lot of things happening at a lot of time. You've been in New York, you've been in politics, and you founded a a So
I would say it's been about a 10, 15 year journey. Yeah, so it's not been a short one, but it's not been overly long. And years go like this. But yeah, if I reflect back scarily, it's about 10, 15 years.
That's wonderful. And also, I would like to understand, in fintech, what has been a journey? You have been in crypto as well, right?
Yes.
So could you tell us about that, and how did you transition from to more traditional payments from crypto?
So, I entered the world of crypto. I said I got advice to move into fintech. Crypto at the time was, becoming more of a mainstream topic. I'd always been following it.
Sorry to interrupt. And this is which year?
Oh God, you're testing me now. I think 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was kind of when it was surging. I think it got to like 20K, and everyone's like, whoa, and mainstream people were buying on apps like Coinbase. And I liked the angle that Luno had at the time, which was to focus on sort of in the emerging markets as well, kind of financial empowerment, inclusion, making it from the average Joe, not a sophisticated investor, not one that's particularly tech savvy, but one that can access to hold value, like a store of value, really. So dived into that. It was helping, they just raised money from Baldwin Capital, so helping alongside the CEO, like launch within the UK and Europe and build out the team. So obviously working with the different markets across South Africa, Nigeria, Indonesia. And so thinking more about how does growth kind of play a role. So I'd have to have my entrepreneurial hat on, but obviously learning a lot still around crypto and so on. It was a fascinating journey, but then I got approached for this role at N26. N26 was launching in the UK, huge news. N26 was like the darling of fintech in Europe. There was a fantastic opportunity to enter a company at that stage of rapid growth with some really smart people. I spent a bit of time in Berlin as well, because obviously that's the head office. Felt really kind of never been in Rome at that point with like everyone. It was kind of an A player, had such kind of thought processes around how to deliver their work. So it was a lot of learning and absorbing the kind of soft skills around big organizations, as well as of course like delivering the hard skills around commercial and business development as well in the UK.
Got it. And tell us more about banks.
Yeah.
How do they utilize the latest technology, or are they even using AI for that matter, which is the hot topic everywhere, to drive a transformation into the fintech industry over here?
So not AI, no. I think we're very kind of payment kind of focused, and we want to make sure that people get choice of payments. We want to make sure it's more economical and makes sense for the merchants that right now obviously are paying quite a lot of fees when you talk about other payment methods like card, but also enabling the role of banks to make a closer role in between consumer and merchant, and taking advantage of the developments in some countries like India, for example, obviously here where faster payments and the rails that they're building is just, it makes sense to build a payment network on top of it.
So what problem is banks solving over here?
So it's an interesting question. I think that in each market would be a different answer. But if you're talking about the UK, I would say it's been driven a lot by merchant demand and infrastructure development, that there has been a demand for a more economical and cost-efficient payment method from merchants here in the UK. There's already a lot more choice, I would say, versus other markets, but that choice doesn't necessarily drive better economics for the merchant. Buy now, pay later, it's not particularly cheap, right, for merchants, but it's good choice for the consumer. There is also a push for the consumer, though, for security. They want better security, less fraud, it's directly from your bank account, it's encrypted. You can't take the card details and me go and pay with your card somewhere else. So you're drastically reducing operational costs as well, and the headache that obviously a consumer would have with fraud. So it's a lot of the kind of different factors and dynamics that are being pushed in this market in particular that makes Pay by Bank a perfect solution to solve those problems.
Okay, and which markets are you present in?
So we're in UK, Europe, the US and Australia. For now, APAC is an increasingly growing market for us. Australia is well primed for Pay by Bank. They've had developments with Pay2, and we are launching with several merchants there with our major bank partner, National Australia Bank. We've also partnered and have investors, so a combination across Bank of America, Citi, FIS. So we really kind of focus on these big distribution partners that also bring a lot of the relationships with merchants, but also the infrastructure that you would need, like accounts or FX and so on, to really make Pay by Bank a more powerful tool, not just in isolation, but holistically across finance and payments for a business.
Great. And how much funding have you received so far?
Yeah, so around over 50 million, and we are, we're careful about how we raise money. We want to be thoughtful in how we kind of garner the buy-in from our strategic partners. We kind of see them as buying into the network that we're building, and a network takes a long time to build. And so we're very thoughtful about how we actually get the right people on our cap table to really drive growth.
Could you remind me of the investors on your cap table?
So, at present, Insight Partners are probably the most well-known VC. As I said, mentioned the banks like NAB, Citi, Bank of America, they're all invested within Banked as well.
Got it. And what are your goals for 2024 as a company in fintech?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, literally this week I've been trying to put together a strategy document to answer that question and get the buy-in from the team. I think the goal really is, and it might be sound silly, but growth. But I think it's more than that. I think it's more about getting the product out there in the market, right? So it's less about getting maybe new partners. I think we can do that. We've already got the case studies to show we're very capable of working with very large institutions across multiple markets with very complex onboarding processes, but we have the infra security, we have all the processes and policies in place. What we now need to do is get those partners ready and primed in market to get those merchants active as well. So I would say product deployment is a big thing that we want to see.
That's interesting. So talking about your partners, could you name some of them?
Yeah, so the ones I've named, so FIS, we have working with them in the US. Citi, we've reviewed to work with them, but in particular the UK to start, and then we'll look at progress from there. Bank of America in Europe, and again, looking at other markets as well. NAB, obviously, in Australia. So we have these partners to help open up markets. And they have a lot of infrastructure that we can use, as I mentioned, like Rails, account services, and so on. So enabling us to enhance our product into these markets. And then, as I said, growing markets into APAC, in particular Hong Kong, Singapore, and of course, doubling down on the US growth, right? America is a big land to try and grab. It's very competitive, it's complex. The infrastructure isn't the best. Versus somewhere like the UK in terms of the rails, but they don't have a faster payments sort of kind of rail that we have here. So building a product that fits the demands within the restrictions that may be existing within the infrastructure, but still creating a product that solves real problems.
Got it. So I'm just trying to understand your competitors
Yes.
in the market.
Yeah.
Who are they and how are you trying to define a line from them?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I'd say that if you look at open banking in Europe or pay by bank globally, because that doesn't necessarily mean open banking doesn't exist everywhere, but essentially account to account payments is the catch-all, you'd probably think yourself of, I don't know, Trula, Yapily, etc. here, maybe Trustly, etc. Maybe in the US has sort of started a little bit, but it's looking at those providers that are focused on account to account payments. Now, we are very different to them. We think about a global approach. So we don't necessarily say, well, this is how you implement in the UK, this is how it works in Australia. It's all very different. It's a global extraction across our platform. So it's one global API. We are partner driven. So meaning that we don't necessarily want to, call thousands of merchants and go to sort of mum and pop shops. We go to the large partners to distribute to enterprises. We believe the network will come alive when you get plugged into these major kind of sort of platforms within the bank. That's where you're going to get massive enterprises working and buying pay by bank. So that's a huge differentiator as well in our go-to-market. And we're thinking strategically long term. So it's something about how do we make this network a sustainable business model, right? It's not just a race to the bottom in economics. It's cheaper. Let's just keep competing downwards. We want to get out of that. We want to talk about the value-added services, the SKU level data that you can get that creates more value actually in pay by bank. That isn't just a race to the bottom in economics as well.
Got it. That's a great strategy for dealing with the competitors. But I also want to ask one question about bank and about the future of fintech. How do you see it as evolving right now?
Yeah.
Gen Z is coming in. I was just talking to another fintech company before you, and they were focusing on Gen Z. So
Right.
I just want to see how it is transforming. Are you planning to bring AI? Are you planning to bring any generative technology into, or are you going to strictly stick to payments and those softwares?
Yeah, so I think, again, not AI specifically, but I think we like to think outside the box. So in the US as a market, as I said, there are restrictions to real-time money movement. And so what we try and do is actually think deeper of how we build net new products for the market, working with very large institutions that own a lot of the infrastructure so that we can develop new products that others don't have. And it's something I'm speaking vaguely about because I can't really talk about openly, but being able to do real-time push payments, for example, in the US, being able to leverage the infrastructure of our partners to enable that, that's something that is going to be game-changing in the world of payments, especially in the US. And that's something we want to build upon and think about. I think in terms of the evolution of fintech in general, I think you need to think carefully about your talent. Like, people will come and go more frequently. People, I believe, should be incentivized quite well by equity and buy-in within the mission of that business. I think you need to think a bit more laterally about, like, do you need to go broad in market or just deep in one? And there's a business case to say actually just going deep in one, like a Monzo, is a far more effective business model and sustainable. I think fintech should be looking at sustainable and profitable growth. I think that has become more of a talking point from investors. So not necessarily just adding technology because it might give this much value, but like, how are you going to create a sustainable business over the long term? I think that's something that we need to focus in fintech.
Yeah, this brings me to another question which just popped up. What do you think is the biggest challenge in the world of payments right now?
I would say the biggest problems in payments would be the real-time movement of money. Not all markets have cracked it, have developed it, and governments and other agencies within each market are kind of developing it at different paces. So I think that is a big problem point within the evolution of payments as well. I would say the general powers that exist within the payment world and the kind of duopoly, like MasterCard, Visa, that kind of own a lot of the payment flow across the globe, and how do you move some of that into a different channel, into a different network to make it, as we just discussed, very efficient. That's going to have a lot of more players and major banks and even governments and regulators playing a part in that. I would say within UK and Europe specifically, we're going to struggle a little bit if the regulators and banks don't move faster with some of the, like, for example, the open banking regulation they've put in place as well. It's going to hinder the innovation that we were hoped for as well. I think the big thing as well, and it is maybe restricted to fintech, is capital raising. I think fundraising and capital to create a profitable business is something that is going to be a problem that generally the market will hopefully solve, but a business needs to solve. So getting, thinking what's your fundraising strategy, how do you then use that capital efficiently as well?
So Maya, you have been the female in fintech and payments, which is so male dominated. So what are the early challenges that you faced and you think they still are there?
It's a good question. I think, to be honest, it's challenges you'd face in many industries, not necessarily just fintech. I think in law and banking. I think, it's a lesson where females, feel maybe they don't fit, they don't look the same, they don't talk the same, the background is different. That, to be honest, is not what we should be thinking. Diversity brings others up because you learn from each other. So the more diverse workforce you have, the better it is for everyone. So seeing your value in that diversity. So not looking for homogenous, how do I fit in, but how do I add diverse and a different viewpoint to the room. I would say be confident. There's a lot of preconceptions when you walk into a room. If you look different, you're not as tall, and all these silly things that people might perceive, you've got to be confident with the content that you create, right? And not be so self-aware that these ideas or preconceptions are around you, right? The more you indulge and think about them, the more you're going to feel retracted and that you're not proving yourself or putting yourself out there. I would also say, actually, to that point, thirdly, is don't always try and prove yourself. Like, this part of the confidence is if you believe in your ability and your content and why you want to go down this road or this career path in a maybe male-dominated area, believe that you're adding value without having to try and always regressively push yourself forward, because it's a delicate balance of being front and center and not being a team player. And I think that's something that we have to think about as well. To kind of get people on board, you need to be a team player as well, not just be great at what you do.
That's true. I think being a woman is difficult, and being a woman of color is also,
yes,
it adds more niche to the difficulty level,
I guess. For sure. It does. But then you've got to think about, like, for me in a commercial role, I'm not just selling to white men. I'm selling to women of different diversity backgrounds, different countries. So you, as a fintech, need that ability to relate to the different people that you're interacting with and the work and then the people that you potentially want to partner with. So it's kind of, again, like, we as an industry need to evolve to see those assets that we need, because it isn't just about, have you done this before? Have you done that before? It's like, have I got someone that can relate to the people that we're trying to target, for example? Mm-hmm. And is that something that I can leverage? But it's definitely difficult. It's definitely been a journey. 10, 15 years, as I mentioned, the world has changed in the 10, 15 years. Maybe I've seen the change because as I've, progressed in my career, you kind of build that reputation a little bit. But for those coming in, as I said, I say be confident, bring good content. Don't need to be overly trying to prove yourself at every step of the way, because it will burn you out. Believe that you're adding value and be a team player as well. And that should hopefully hold you in good stead, because there is great examples of powerful women and CEOs, Jane Fraser of Citi, like, it's possible, right? So it's something about by keeping that focus and not necessarily being intimidated by difference. You need to embrace the difference.
Yeah, that's true. And those are some great advices. Thank you, Maya, so
No
much
worries.
for your time. It was so lovely talking to you.
You
And
too.
thank you for sharing everything with us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us with Maya and me over here. And I have more guests coming in today at Homegrown, so stay tuned.